7 years after Queensland teenager Daniel Morcombe disappeared without trace, a coronial inquest is hearing from some of the state's most notorious prisoners, pedophiles and a killer among them, in a fresh effort to solve the mystery. Top barristers have been hired to dissect their testimony, while the Morcombe family clings to the hope their search for the truth could soon be over. Annie Guest reports from Brisbane.
From their Sunshine Coast home, the Morcombes are embarking on one of the most torturous trips any family could face at Christmas time. They're on their way to find out the truth about their lost son.
All set to go?
Daniel Morcombe was about to turn 14 when he set out to buy Christmas presents 7 years ago. He's never been seen since.
But we're committed to laying that poor boy to rest, and that's the motivating factor each and every day that we get out of bed.
We're all looking for the same thing, looking for Daniel, his remains and who's responsible.
Stay strong, buddy.
Daniel, turn around. Just wave. Daniel Morcombe is remembered as engaging and happy, a best friend to his twin Bradley, and a playmate for their older brother Dean. The trio enjoyed the freedoms of country life growing up in the Sunshine Coast hinterland.
Daniel, it was your fault that I crashed. Well, how did he crash?
I came off the back.
But one brother was to become the subject of one of Queensland's biggest criminal investigations. Daniel Morcombe was last seen waiting for a bus under this bridge.
Have to be one of the unluckiest children on that day ever to find himself in those circumstances.
Daniel Morcombe was a victim of a tragic chain of events. First, a bus broke down before reaching him. Then the replacement bus was ordered to drive past the boy because there was another one on the way. The third bus arrived within a couple of minutes, but Daniel Morcombe had disappeared. A $1 million reward, 10,000 police interviews and 18,000 pieces of information have produced nothing except a strange web of lies.
There are, a number of really unusual features to this case.
Criminologist Stephen Smallbone says abductions rarely involve strangers or are in such a public place in broad daylight. And he says some of the 33 so-called persons of interest are among the most extreme of society's outsiders. They include psychopaths, pedophiles, drug addicts and a convicted killer.
It seems to me that the police are dealing with a kind of a fringe group. Not only a fringe group in society in general, but perhaps even a fringe group within the offender population.
We just can't imagine or feel, what that poor boy would have gone through.
Police have used precious resources chasing down apparently fictitious stories about a drugged Daniel, dungeons and torture. But now members of that fringe group, some of whom admitted lying to police or alternatively refused to talk at all, are being compelled to answer questions in court. A coronial inquest that began on the Sunshine Coast in October has moved to Brisbane so it can hear from some of Queensland's most dangerous prisoners.
They've got to understand that they are hurting our family, because we have to sit there and listen to these stories and mentally get twisted with the anguish.
3 of Brisbane's top criminal barristers have been hired to help separate fact from fiction. The person of interest, known as P2, was called before Queensland coroner Michael Barnes today. P2 was a former heroin addict whose home had a room known as the Dungeon. Another man linked to the case alleged Daniel Morcombe was kept there. From the witness stand, P2 looked across the courtroom, where Denise and Bruce Morcombe sat at the bar table with their sons behind them. The family listened intently as P2 said he'd never kept Daniel Morcombe in the room known as the Dungeon, but it was simply a cooler place to sleep in the summer months. The inquest has earlier heard from another person of interest known as P1. The former drug addict is in jail for the manslaughter of a pedophile. He told the court the various stories he'd told Bruce Morcombe in a meeting and police over the years about Daniel Morcombe being in P2's dungeon, drugged, his body thrown in the river or buried in the forest were all lies. He said he had a vendetta against police and wanted to annoy them. P1 then implicated another person of interest, but he was questioned about the link between that allegation and seeking reward money. P1 and P2 and the 4 others who follow them to the witness stand will face cross-examination by the Morcombe's counsel, Peter Boyce. Of the 6, most have committed sex offences and half are in jail.
Of those persons of interest that the coroner's identified, you couldn't rule out any of them.
But at one stage it was feared none of those linked to the case would testify at the inquest because police declared there was no merit in calling people they'd already questioned.
I must say that I couldn't quite fathom why that submission was made in the first place.
We were very disappointed on that day.
The coroner disagreed with police. It's the second time police have been challenged over their management of the case. Bruce Morcombe testified police had sometimes been dismissive and were initially slow to respond.
Those 13 hours, which potentially is crucial, as we will establish with particularly one of those persons of interest.
However, he says overall police have done a good job in identifying potential suspects. The Morcombes threw Daniel's twin, Bradley, a 21st birthday party on the weekend.
And what was it like for you to throw him the party, just one of your twin boys?
It was pretty hard, but we could see that Brad was really happy with his friends. Bruce gave a speech and said that Daniel's not here. We didn't want the night to be sad. We wanted him to be happy and enjoy himself.
Last week marked the 7th anniversary of Daniel Morcombe's disappearance. To help deal with the loss, the couple set up a foundation that maintains awareness about their son, helps child victims and promotes safety.
Always be observant of your surroundings.
But for now, the foundation work is briefly on hold as the Morcombe family closely follows the inquest.
We're struggling to hold food down at the minute, so, it's very unnerving.
Annie Guest reporting from Brisbane.